Hey, it's Jack, and this video is called Why Do I Keep Falling in Love? My name's Jack Butler, I'm a relationship coach. I release new videos twice a week on relationships and personal growth. And if you're new to the channel or you haven't yet subscribed, come on, what are you waiting for? Tap this button here and then hit that bell notification so you can hear of new videos as soon as they come out. And listen, if you haven't taken my free webinar, I want to make an invitation to you. It's called The 3 Keys to Being Relationship Ready. How being the real you can attract Mr. Right. It's all about trusting that you are enough and worthy of love, and that you being yourself is the best route to finding the right partner. So if you doubt that, or you haven't found the guy that's right for you, come on, join us. You can just click the link here below the video. It'll be the first link that appears, and you can find a time that works for you in your time zone. And it's with my teaching partner, Clayton Olson. It's been getting rave reviews. It's some of the best teaching material that we've put out. And we've also just tightened the format as well. So we'd love to have you with us. Click the link, find a time in your time zone. Alrighty, so you might be asking the question, why do I keep falling in love? So I just want to get right into this and say that in my experience, some people are almost falling in love with falling in love, right? They're in love with the notion of being in love. Now, if you've never been in love, I would really encourage you to fall in love sometime because it's an amazing experience. And if you've fallen in love a lot, awesome, you've had that experience a number of times. What might be news to you is that falling in love and maintaining a mature adult love relationship are two very different things. Falling in love and maintaining an adult love relationship are two very different things. So this is why you might want to relax a little bit on the falling in love part, because it may not be the steps that you think it is into the right relationship with you. You can fall in love with all sorts of people. Ideally, what you might be looking for is a partner that you have real compatibility with, a partner that has a worldview that you share at some level, that you can align to some extent in your beliefs and values, that you want the same things out of life enough that you can build a connection. And for a lot of you that are into this more conscious relationship that some of us talk about, you also want a partner that's into waking up, right? And that gets relationship is the working surface for our mutual awakening. And if that's something you care about, you're going to want to be met by a partner that also cares about that and also gets it. So falling in love, let's just break that down a little bit. Quite often that involves a projection, right, on the other person, where you imagine this sort of ideal love object is in front of you, someone that, perhaps is so different than a guy you've dated before, your previous relationship, or your ex-husband, or your ex-lover, or perhaps something that didn't go so well. And now there's this person in front of you, and you're thinking, this time it's going to be different, because he's just so this, and he's just so that, and we're just so this, and we're just so that. Now, this process is a great thing. As I say, I just want to read down the score. Falling in love, awesome. You just might want to notice there's a kind of intoxication that's part of it, right? There's romantic infatuation is another way of talking about falling in love. And sometimes we're obsessed. Sometimes we can't get the person off our mind. Sometimes we're imagining all these futures that we could be in. Enjoy the ride, but realize it's a roller coaster, and that roller coaster doesn't equal the answer to whether this is a person you want to have a long-term relationship with. So the antidote to this, or the solution to this, is actually to be a little less hypnotized by the falling in love process, right? To actually get out of your own fantasy and imagination and make more contact with reality. What is the reality once we've been through some of that romantic infatuation? What is the reality of our connection? What is the reality of being together? What is the reality of the parts of relationship that you don't tend to attune to when you've got strong sexual chemistry running and romantic infatuation? You're kind of intoxicated. You're not thinking about Monday mornings, right? You're not thinking about putting the trash out. You're not thinking about some of the unglamorous aspects of being in a relationship that is part and parcel of it for most of us, right? Unless you want to have purely a lover relationship, where the thing that you attend to is your lover energy, but you're not really trying to do a partnership in the world. You're not really trying to create mutual obligations, hold down responsibilities, build a kind of ongoing relationship container. But for most of you watching this, I think you probably want some kind of committed love with a guy. And if that is the case, you might need to start kind of almost falling out of love with falling in love, and realize that the high school love feeling thing isn't the determinant of the relationship that will take you the places that you probably want to go. So first off, it's just kind of taking that in, drinking it in, and realizing that distinction. Secondly, what would it be like for you to be dating someone and to spend 0 to no time in the future, right? Because often this kind of falling in love, where eventually we kind of get bumped out of the reality and notice, oh, they have all these things that I didn't notice about them, right? Because we're kind of drawn to the light of someone. We don't tend to see their darkness in the dating process. So we want to start to see that more clearly. And a good way of doing that is just not to get into the future and start fantasizing about where it's going, and actually just pay attention to what is he saying, what's happening in the connection, how authentic are we being, what's here, what's being said, and what's not being said. Right? And one of the reasons to do that is because then you don't eventually fall off this kind of waterfall of, wow, I thought we were this, but actually we're something else. We're kind of saying, drop the expectation, drop the fantasy, drop the future narrative, and actually be with, in a more clear and direct way, what is actually happening in the connection. And you might have to realize that sometimes your romantic longings are themselves built upon stories and narratives that may or may not even be possible, right? Culturally, we have a lot of unrealistic expectations about relationship. The kind of Hollywood view of relationship isn't normally the full story. It may be part of the story for some of us, and that's awesome, but it's not normally the full story about the things that an ongoing connection with someone actually takes. The attention, the energy, the rituals, the edges, the triggers, the defenses, the wounds, the things that actually get activated when you have the person that you're going to be able to do your work with. All of those things are likely going to be up for you. And if you are too enamored of the falling in love process, you'll probably check out. Probably say, oh, no, this is not for me. I'm not feeling it anymore. I'm not feeling it anymore. And that might be the beginning of you actually doing some real inner work. And if you get off the boat at that point, you're probably just going to go back around, find some other guy to fall in love with, run the same expectations, run the same fantasy. At some point, you'll be less interested, one or the other of you, and you'll probably check out. And you're just going to keep in this process. And of course, it's frustrating. You're having these it's kind of like being addicted to a drug, right? When you have the hit, awesome. But then at some point you come down, right? And that experience sometimes doesn't feel so good. And then in order to get you got to do like another hit. So you've got to go around and kind of like, oh, I've got to fall in love again and again. And at some point you're going to realize that that isn't a very fulfilling cycle. And that what you might want to do is slow it right down and, in a way, cultivate equanimity is the thing that's listening. Whether that's a word you know or not, but being equanimous means that you're not all over the place in a roller coaster of emotions. It means that you've got more center and you are more sober about what is actually going on. You're not just being taken for a ride by your romantic infatuation. And believe me, when you start to not desire that the falling in love thing has to kind of happen in the way that it has in the past, when you start to attune to other things, I think life will start to hand you different opportunities. It's almost like you're getting more ready for this more mature form of love and relationship where we're actually doing it in full awareness, right? It's not just like we're drugging ourselves into it, getting the high of the romantic infatuation, but then not actually being willing to hang around and make something happen or doing our work. And of course, one of the things that happens when you fall in love is that your own idealized self-image is sometimes in there, right? The things that you love about yourself, when you notice, oh, wow, he loves to travel as well. Oh, wow, he loves beer or craft ale or Bolivia or whatever it is. There's a part of it that's actually you kind of falling in love with yourself or falling in love with this projection of your idealized self. And you can also start to stop doing that. If you just have a little bit of sobriety that, you know what, everyone has gifts and talents, everyone has frailties and vulnerabilities, right? Everyone's got some wounds. There's not going to be a way around that. And actually that's part of what you can do when you really fall in love. And it's not this kind of intoxicating romantic infatuation, but the actual falling in love with a clear sight of someone. Part of what you're doing is you're falling in love with the whole person. Right? You're falling in love with the light and the dark. Rather than just being like, oh yeah, I love the light, but I sort of try and not really notice that there's this dark side. Actually, I bring them both into view and I include them all, and I can actually love on the places where, yeah, this guy gets tight or contracted or has a strange thing that he does or has this curious form of unavailability that's probably based upon some bad thing that happened in his past. I can start to include all that rather than I have to kind of keep that out of view in order that I keep up this sort of idealized heavenly image of this person. So a lot of this is spiritual development. It's inner work. It's actually getting with the program. It's developing a deeper love of reality. It's not having to be in love with ideas and projections. It's actually noticing the pristineness of what is and being okay with it, and not necessarily needing to distort it or wrap it up in a story. You know, of course, we all love great stories, right? We all love romantic stories. You know, we all love the love stories that work out. And that's great. You know, it's just there's a way that you can love that stuff without having to create a story that actually isn't there, right? The best stories in some ways are the ones that are somewhat real, like they actually manifest, or, you know, maybe it's a story that's kind of making an allegorical point about something. But in terms of actual love stories, the best ones are the ones that are real, rather than the ones that were based upon some big fantasy, romantic infatuation, intoxicated, delusional fantasy that when it drops, it's just like life has ripped the carpet from under you and you have no idea where to stand. You have no idea what's going on. The goggles have been lifted. The veil has been drawn back. And actually what you see is this kind of ugly sight versus this fantasy that you were looping yourself into. And that's what we want to avoid, right? I think it's better to have a relationship that keeps kind of growing rather than, oh my God, it was so amazing, and then boom, we drop off and we actually have no idea how to get back up. We have an unrealistic expectation of what a love relationship can feel like. Because part of your freedom, let's just be blunt about it, part of your freedom in relationship, and I'm not saying that I'm even always good at this, even though I try and practice it. Part of your freedom is the ability to feel both good and bad, to have quote positive, quote negative feelings and experiences, and for it to be okay and for you to be gradually dropping the narrative and judgment that you have on that stuff, rather than it being like, oh, I'm in a great relationship because I feel good, or oh, I'm in a bad relationship because I feel bad. It's kind of more mature than that. It's more like, yeah, there's going to be ups and downs for better and for worse. That's part of it. But I actually don't need to get hypnotized into this drug that doesn't really teach me how to have a better life, right? If you're getting high all the time on the weekends, it doesn't really teach you how to have better weekdays, right? It's kind of an escape. And for a lot of you, if you've just been in this loop of falling in love, it's kind of an escape. And what you might want to look at is your relationship with boredom, your relationship with frustration, your relationship with sobriety, and your relationship with equanimity. And none of that is going to excite you, right? You're probably like, oh, Jack, that's such fun homework. You're such a fun guy. Thank you for putting that in my reality. I'm saying it because it might be the very path that teaches you a deeper, truer love and freedom than you've actually experienced, and that is more real than the intoxication, that is more sustainable than the intoxication, and doesn't have you falling off the cliff, that this pattern of falling in love over and over again and whipping yourself into some projected narrative of who this guy is and what's going to happen and what's it going to be and how you're going to feel, all of that can just become noise of history. And you can actually get with the reality and see the beauty in what is and what is unfolding, rather than having to amp up a fantastical view of reality in your own head. And that's what I want for you. And that's my hope, that in getting this video, I've helped edge you just along that path to thinking, there might be another way of doing this. And the thing that I've done in the past, I've done it enough probably to know that it's not actually going to be the thing that works for me. And so I'm ready to try something new. And that something new might be slower. It might be less Vegas, right? It might be less like a wild, frenzied night, but it might actually be the truer path to the kind of ongoing love connection that you actually want. And that's why you come on this channel. So let's get you closer to that. Thanks so much for listening. Questions and comments below this video. Click the webinar link if you haven't taken the webinar. Again, you can go here, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you with us ongoingly. And as always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.